that saw an engagement with 5 heads of government, the local representative of the CARICOM team being the Secretary General himself, that you will have a government that is desperate for power, using all kinds of mechanisms to go to the court today, having had their commissioners at GECOM to facilitate delays on Sunday, delays on Monday, delays on today, Tuesday, late this afternoon, to get an ex parte injunction to stop the recount of the votes. They are mortally afraid of counting the ballots, or I should say recounting the ballots. And we will come in later into the program about why the ballots needs to be recounted. They are mortally afraid for the recount of the ballots, and they are now doing everything within their power to stymie and to use the court as the excuse to stop a high-level agreement that was made, brokered by CARICOM, between President Granger and leader of the opposition to settle this dispute. I don't know if I could even think that there's anything that is decent or honest about this APNU AFC cabal that is desperately using all kinds of means to remain into power. And those would be my opening remarks, because there's a lot that I want to say this afternoon, and I hope we get into it.
Yes, and we're here today because of all of the delays that would have been. We've seen numerous delay tactics by the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, and we believe that the APNU-AFC coalition is definitely part and parcel with GECOM in attempting to rig the elections. We've seen 2 fraudulent declarations that were made, and we would have moved to the High Court, but in the delay tactics, we saw them becoming as desperate to even call a bomb threat, right? Bishop, you would have been around and you would have seen a lot of the frustrations. We know the Guyanese people are frustrated because the people just want the truth. And the truth is, in the Region 4 results, which the APNU-AFC coalition and GECOM are so afraid to go into those ballot boxes and do the recount, because they know what will be revealed. They know that the truth will be revealed when we go in there. The PPPC is the only party that has put out their SOPs.
We have publicized our statement of polls. And then we went another step further. We publicized the tally sheets that are signed by the presiding officers. And it's up for public scrutiny. No, but Ms. Harris, let me just indicate. The intent of Mr. Granger and his group is to have a declaration that says he is the winner, that he is sworn into office, even if they break the law, violate the Representation of the People's Act, even if it is done through fraud. And once he is sworn in, the only way that you could address those illegalities and those wicked acts, that I will put it, is through an election petition. And in Guyana, everybody know, from since 2015, when they went ahead with their rigging scheme and they got through, we filed an election petition that up until now, it is not heard. So every step of the way, let's go through. We had an election on March 2nd. Regions 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 were were tabulated, declared without any issue. Without any issue. Those declarations are known publicly in the regions, and they are known throughout the country because people have been following. When those declarations were made, while Region 4 was still on the tabulation, it was clear that the PPPC had an unassailable lead of about 52,000 votes. The only thing that the facilitators of this conspiratorial ploy at GECOM could have done was to depart from the legal mechanism at arriving at totals and to interject a mechanism that will allow for rigging. The legal mechanism is a tabulating of original statements of poll. Now, there is something that is very interesting that I want to say to Guyanese this afternoon. At the close of poll, when the votes were counted at the place of poll, 3 original statements of polls were prepared. The presiding officer had to give one to the deputy returning officer. The presiding officer also had to send one to the chief elections officer, and one was also sent to the returning officer of the district. In this case of Region 4, there are 2 people or 2 persons who know by way of original statements of poll the true figures of both the PPPC and the APNU-AFC, Mr. Mingo and his staff, and the chief elections officer. I'm advised that when the original statements of poll go to GECOM, there are 2 commissioners, one from each side, that will examine the statement of poll and initial it. So even if the returning officer, Mr. Mingo, want to do mischief, Mr. Lowenfield would also have all of those documents, so he will know the totals. It is clear that a number of individuals are part of this grand rigging scheme. And let me tell you how I know that. There were 2 declarations that were made by Mr. Mingo. The first declaration that was made using the spreadsheet had figures that were not consistent with the duplicate copies of the statement of poll that were in the possession of the PPPC and the other smaller parties. And it was also not consistent with copies of the statements of poll that were placed on a public place outside of every polling station. The numbers were doctored and they were fixed. They were called challenges because they did not fulfill the process. Every session of the court, as it relates to those matters, I attended. I heard the arguments. I heard the rulings of the Chief Justice. I heard the questions that were asked and the answers that were given. So I speak from a position of first-hand knowledge. The Chief Justice said she wants compliance with Section 84, and that is the statements of poll that were transmitted according to the law to the returning officer must be displayed to all parties and the votes must be tabulated. The counsel for the returning officer said to the Chief Justice he will ensure that there is compliance with the law. What did we see? A delay again, the removal of the process from Ashman's building to GECOM, and then photocopies of statements of poll were used and scanned and projected onto a bed sheet under a shed during the night, where Mr. Vincent Alexander himself, a commissioner of GECOM, says there was not sufficient clarity. And of course, he didn't blame it on any deliberate action of GECOM. He blamed it on the technology. An important thing, like determining the outcome of an election, he as a commissioner is satisfied that the technology is not the best, but we could still go ahead with a bed sheet and some cardboard blocks on the shed in the night. They went through with such speed, calling the numbers. But our people were there checking, and there again, we knew that the numbers were fictitious. But Guyanese, listen to this. The first declaration varies from the second declaration. And if you are using the same source document, how could you end up with two sets of figures? How could you end up with two sets of figures? So you had a first declaration, erroneous figures, a second declaration of erroneous figures, but the first and the second declaration does not match. And in that matrix, you have an officer by the name of the Chief Elections Officer who sits at GECOM with copies of all the original statements of poll, and he knows the exact figures, and he's not intervening and not doing anything about it. So be that as it may. So the whole world has pronounced against electoral fraud. Just this afternoon, in wide circulation now, you will see that the U.S. Secretary of State did not tweet this time. He spoke at a press conference. Yes, Guyana became the subject of a press conference of the United States Secretary of State. And what he's talking about, they are following the tabulation of votes. And he's saying clearly, any government that accedes to power or office as a result of electoral fraud, and those who facilitate that, there will be serious consequences. And here it is, the chairman of CARICOM, with Prime Minister Motley, the chairman of CARICOM, with Prime Minister of Trinidad, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, and Trinidad and Tobago, came, met with the parties. An agreement was made to bring this controversy to an end, that we simply recount the votes. The gold standard is the ballot boxes. If there's a dispute of what is on the paper, what is on the statements of poll, what is on the spreadsheet, let everybody assemble, open 879 boxes, we count, we record, we add up, and we settle the issue. Oh yes, an agreement was made. And from the time that agreement was made, the chairman of CARICOM, with her technical staff at the Secretariat, was able to assemble and land in Guyana a high-level team since Saturday night to begin this process of supervising the counting of the votes. And what we have had is delay after delay after delay after delay. The two leaders have to sign an agreement, and then you are quarreling over the wording of the agreement. And then when the agreement is signed, you have to get legal advice on the agreement. And then you have to get GECOM to write the terms of reference of how this high-level team will operate. And we have to haggle and quarrel over how many boxes will be counted at a time, and the location of the counting, and the hours of counting, and who will be involved in the counting. And we're going on and on and on and on and on. And all of that was to buy time for the conspiratorial ploy to play out. And that is to get an entrance to the court to put a case that even though President Granger, the presidential candidate for APNU, who the fraudulent declarations made by Mr. Mingo benefits, because those two fraudulent declarations benefit APNU and Mr. Granger to get him into office. He agrees, let us recount the ballots. I don't know what is happening in the PNC and what is happening in the APNU. But what is clear, they're not consistent with their behavior. They go on the high altar and say nice, lofty things. And then at the bottom, they're undermining, conniving, just being deceptive. And it is insulting to the people of Guyana because everybody is seeing through this. If you believe you won the elections, number one, you could have put up your statements of poll to contradict the PPP statements of poll. You have not done so. Neither GECOM nor the APNU AFC have displayed for the world to see how they got their numbers.
And Bishop, not cutting you, but I just want to add that the OAS that were actually helping to observe elections here, they actually noted that the statement of polls that were put out by the People's Progressive Party Civic remain unchallenged because APNU has refused to put out their SOPs that they claim would have helped them to arrive at the same results that were declared, the fraudulent declaration.
Yes, and there is a letter from the European Union Observer Mission asking for copies of the statements of polls so they can do their own verification with the spreadsheet to see how you arrive at the numbers. Of course, there's no response, and we don't know what has happened to that. Now, if you believe that you won these elections, Mr. Granger, if Valda Lawrence believed that the APNU AFC won these elections, and Joseph Harmon, and Winston Jordan, and and Moses Nagamutu, and Ramjitan, and Kati Hughes, who've been talking a lot, if you believe that you have won these elections, why the resistance to the recount? Now, this is what happens. So last night, GECOM, under pressure, because the CARICOM high-level delegation is here to start a recount, start moving containers to the Otachong International Conference Center, where people were assembled to start the recount because we were advised that's where the recount would take place. All day they didn't move containers. When the afternoon comes, 5:36, they start moving containers. Because GECOM likes doing things in the dark. For some reason, they like doing things in the dark. As a matter of fact, the last notification that we got is that the recount was supposed to start at 5 o'clock this afternoon. And just before 5 o'clock, you get the injunction. So they like doing things in the dark. Now, they start bringing in the containers. The candidates and agents and representatives of all the various political parties were there. They were supposed to bring Region 4 containers because the count was supposed to start with Region 4. They brought some of Region 4 containers. Then they brought other containers and left back some of Region 4 at GECOM. Then we discovered that they're not bringing any more containers over, and there will be no count starting last night. So the first thing they did, they sent the Ministry of Health Vector Control Unit to spray. Now you got 50, 60 people in the yard. We've been out in the yard all afternoon waiting. We talked to the people, says, what were you spraying for? They said ants and mosquitoes and so on. Of course, everybody knows who's the former Minister of Health. And we know that the former Minister of Health is also the chairman of the PNCR, a beneficiary of all the electoral fraud that is taking place. So everybody knows that. So we told the people, man, why I would come here now and spray and so on, so on, so on. Anyway, they went ahead and sprayed, and nobody moved. Because if you got containers in there with ballot boxes, nobody's going to run away and leave those ballot boxes, especially when you separate some here and some there. So we have people at both sides watching. Then, as the place got a little darker, a bus drove in And this bus had about 25 to 30 policemen, fully equipped and all the rest of it. It looked like the riot police. And they went into a formation. You know what was the intention? To ensure that no representative of a political party remains in that compound with those ballot boxes. While the ballot boxes were at GECOM, every political party was able to have a representative there 24/7. So last night was supposed to be a repeat of breaking the chain of command like what took place with the statements of poll at Ashman's building. All the parties were there when they were trying to deal with the statements of poll. Then Mr. Roxanne Myers, who got the job as Deputy Chief Elections Officer under questionable circumstances, where the Ethnic Relations Commission has put out a report indicating that Mr. Vishnu Prasad was the most suited candidate for that job, and she was given that job by the then illegally and unconstitutionally appointed retired Justice James Patterson to facilitate exactly what is taking place right now. She gave orders, and the riot squad went into the Ashman's building and put out everybody. And the chain of command for the statements of poll were broken. So the grand scheme again last night, this time because the count is not on the statements of poll, it's in the boxes, was to compromise the ballot boxes. So they attempt to put everybody out. Of course we resisted. And the end result was I, along with other representatives of political parties, spent the night watching the ballot boxes.
Not forgetting after one of our
Own commissioners was injured.
Yes.
Because while the police was trying to get us out, Commissioner Ben remained near to the boxes. And then the bullyism and the thuggery. You know, I really can't understand policemen who are listening to the news every day, who understand that this issue is about transparency and accountability, will take orders that will violate international best practices and democracy and transparency to facilitate what? What was the intention of the PNC-led APNU AFC last night at the Ottachong Convention Center with those ballot boxes that they did not get to do? And since they did not get to do what they had to do last night with the ballot boxes, which was to compromise their integrity, today they used the courts to stop the recount. Now, you can't fool all the people all the time. You're on trial. The jury is out. You are guilty of electoral fraud. Even your own supporters know it. The son-in-law of Mr. Granger says he cannot believe that the Region 4 election results were credible. Their own supporters know the thing is rigged. Let's get it right. But what they want is that false, illegal declaration that will lead to a swearing in. And then you could go and prove it in court, tie up in court, and just like with the no confidence motion, and then when you get a ruling, you disobey the ruling because of technicalities, and the judge didn't say this, and the judge didn't say that, and you desperately hang on to power. But Ms. Harris, the world is watching, and the world has already spoken. Guyana will become a pariah state if we go ahead with swearing in Granger as president with these fraudulent results. The sanctions that are coming, not even those who are clapping in the streets of Granger, and the 20 or 30 who were at GECOM this afternoon saying, swear him in now, not even they could understand what will happen to Guyana. Nobody will do business with Guyana. This country will go back to the days when we were so poor and isolated. We couldn't borrow. Nobody will do business with us. Why is it that the lust for power by people who know they have lost an election would put us through this kind of a crisis? What is really going on? I cannot understand the madness that is taking place. Because sometimes you get the impression like if Mr. Granger is a reasonable man, and then at the other times you want to know if he has a split personality. If you agree for the recount, then you're trying to back off to say GECOM and GECOM, and you have 3 commissioners at GECOM that you nominate, that you can call and tell them what is it you want, make it happen. Just like the PPPC has 3 commissioners, they could call them and say, this is this, let it happen. You're using GECOM as the excuse. But GECOM was the excuse when Granger wanted to stay in power beyond the time limit of the no confidence motion. GECOM wasn't ready, GECOM wasn't prepared, GECOM didn't have the money. Remember, everything was GECOM, and GECOM is an independent body, and I don't interfere with GECOM. You know, this is a sad state of affair. And here it is that this nation, this Tuesday afternoon, when everybody was putting some amount of confidence that, you know, we could get a recount with a credible group from CARICOM, not a player in the game. We got a Mr. Mingo, who have done it twice in disobedience to Section 84 of the law, out of the way. We have a situation where eyes are going to be watching in, there's going to be supervision. Come on, man. Are you going to tell me the European Union is going to be wrong? The USA, Canada, Britain, the OAS, the whole Commonwealth, CARICOM, the Carter Center, everybody's going to be wrong. The Private Sector Commission, AmCham, all the local observers, everybody is wrong. The only person that is right is Granger, Valda, Harman, Trotman, Basil Williams, Cathy Hughes, Ramjatan, and Moses. They're the right ones. And the other cabal, Winston Jordan and the rest of them. They're the only ones that are right. And they're selling, and James Bond. And they're selling propaganda to the man on the street. The PPP wants to rig the elections. Mr. Mingo is not working for the PPP. Mr. Mingo's actions of disobedience to Section 84 is not benefiting the PPP. It is benefiting Granger and the AP and UAFC. Mr. Lowenfield's neglect of duty, because he has copies of those statements of polling. He knows the numbers. His neglect of duty is not benefiting the PPPC. It's benefiting Granger and the AP and UAFC. So stop insulting the Guyanese people by putting a spin that the PPP is trying to rig the elections and steal the elections. You know exactly that the PPP has won the elections, and you are using administrative mechanisms in breach of the law to facilitate a false declaration so that you could get a president, a president of your choice. It's unacceptable in Guyana in this day and age. This is 2020. This is not 1970 and 78 and 1980. We're in 2020. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody's live streaming. So I'm disappointed that you have police commanders and police officers who are carrying out instructions coming from illegal people who are not authorized to give those instructions. Let reasonableness prevail. Transparency is the order of the day. Why would police be blocking the view of stakeholders to see the locks of the containers so that we cannot maintain a chain of command? Why would police be facilitating those things? Who is giving them those kinds of instructions? It is disgusting. It is vulgar. It's an abuse of process. It is indecency to the highest extent. And in the midst of all of that, you got people who are trying to sugarcoat this wickedness with scriptures and godliness, and God wants David, and God puts David there, and God isn't ready to move David yet. You trying to tell me that Almighty God is condoning wickedness, cheating, and electoral fraud? This is the kind of low that we have come to as a country just because of narrow political interest and lust for power. Even good people who are supposed to have known better have preferred to zip because they are going to be a beneficiary of this illegality. But the world is watching us, and this will not be allowed to happen.
And we've still not been able to receive an explanation as to why Valda Lawrence's signature was on the first fraudulent declaration that was made by the RO. We've seen the other declarations that were made in the other 9 regions only had the signatures of those ROs. So why was her signature there? Up to now, we have not been able
And
to.
not even a response.
Definitely not. We've seen blatant disregard for international community, the international observers. We saw the OAS decide to leave because of the frustrations. But the PPPC, along with the other small parties and the international community, we stand in solidarity against this type of behavior. The attempt to rig an elections in front of the eyes of Guyanese. As you said, the supporters, their own supporters, have decided to come out. The president's son-in-law, Mr. Gaskin, who was a former minister as well, has condemned this type of thing. So we will continue to fight as hard as we can. We know that now we have an injunction to deal with. I can't see that the Madam Chair, Claudette Singh, she told the media, in front of the media, she promised to ensure that GECOM complies, and if we have to go back to the boxes, she will ensure that it is done smoothly. And now we're here today. Yesterday we had a lot of delayed tactics, as we've been having since March 2nd, and all because we know who the winners of the 2020 elections are. It is obvious by now that, I mean, we can make the declaration, but it is obvious by now who the
Anybody who know to add figures, they don't have to wait on a declaration. They already have concluded who are the winners of this election. Once you know to add. But there's a group of people who believe that 34 is the majority of 65 and not 33. So that small group of self-serving people who want to deny reality, they want to deny the figures. But once people know to add, they know the winners of this election. And they know who ought to be sworn in as president. And they know it's not David Granger. You know, but one of the things I wanted to say about the injunction, which is basically blocking the recount and almost forcing
they said a mandatory declaration.
A mandatory declaration. Now, all is not lost, and that is why this wicked plot, this evil, this low, I would call it low thinking, evil that is being thrown at the nation will not prosper. If the chairman of GECOM, retired Justice Claudette Singh, has given an undertaking to the court and to the people of Guyana that she will not proceed with a declaration of a winner until Region 4 votes are recounted, she can still act. Let me explain to you and all the people of Guyana. The Region 4 returning officer has made a declaration, and he has now joined, even though that declaration is false, it is padded, it is no way representing the will of the people. If Mr. Lowenfield, who knows the truth, because remember, he don't have to depend on Mr. Mingo's math. He has those same statements of poll, and he can do the math. But it's a strange thing that in the first declaration, where the figures of Mr. Mingo and the figures of APNU coincided, they went to a second declaration where there were different figures, and the figures of Mr. Mingo and the figures of APNU coincided again. Isn't that strange? All right. Mr. Mingo is putting up figures that nobody else has, but APNU has those figures. He goes to a second declaration. The figures that he's declaring is different to what he declared at first. The figures that he is putting up and APNU's figures are the same. There are no objections from APNU. Who is creating those documents for Mingo and APNU? A commission of inquiry will tell us. But this is the point I want to make. Mr. Lowenfield would have to take the 10 declarations, add the figures, and then go to the commission with a report. The commission has to adopt that report. And if the commission adopts that report, is based upon that adopting of the report, a declaration of the winner is made by the chairman. Mr. Lowenfield could go to the commission with a report, but it don't have to be adopted. Our commissioners know that the figures are false because they have seen copies of the statements of poll in the PPPC's possession. Justice Claudette Singh, retired Justice Claudette Singh, has said that she will facilitate a recount. So all she and the 3 commissioners have to do is to vote that we are rejecting Mr. Lowenfield's report and we would like to have a recount. That's all. So forget about the court case and the court blockage and the court hassling and using the court as a way to force a swearing in of a president. All is not lost. And the other thing that is important to note, and I know there were probably 3 or 4 swearing-ins planned already, because every now and again APNU supporters start celebrating. Like I saw they had some celebration in different places this afternoon. They won again, they won again. It's the 4th time they're going to win on figures that they can't prove to the world, of course. It is not as simple as Mr. Lowenfield adding up 10 numbers. At the level of the commission, you have to get agreement. At least a majority vote. And the person with the casting vote is the chairman. And that is the same person who made an undertaking to the Chief Justice and an undertaking to all the people of Guyana that she will facilitate a recount of Region 4 votes to determine the outcome of the elections. So if she makes an undertaking to the court, is she prepared to go in contempt of court? And if she's prepared to go in contempt of court, one has to ask, what is the pressure she is under? And who is applying that pressure? Who is applying that pressure? Now is the time for Justice Claudette Singh to stamp her authority as chairman of GECOM and not just allow 2 sides to be at each other's throat, but as a judge, an independent thinker, as someone who enjoyed the confidence of both the president and the leader of the opposition. That's why she got to the position of the chairmanship, to stand for what is fair. Nobody's asking you to support the PPP. That's not what the PPP is requesting at all. Just do what is fair. If I have numbers and you have numbers and we're not coming to a conclusion, there's a solution. Let us go into the box, count the votes in the presence of both sides, and we have already said we are prepared to abide by the results of what the box show, and let's bring a solution to this problem. But you have a party who is going to be the beneficiary of an illegal and false declaration, who is not prepared to go to the box. And they are attempting in every way to compromise the box. I went myself today and I saw with my own eyes. 3 containers came from Berbice. 1 went into GECOM's headquarters, and 2 were left parked on the roadway. Now, GECOM can't say they don't have space in the compound, because containers of GECOM compound have been removed and taken to the Ottachong International Convention Center. Why are you leaving Region 6 containers on the roadway? So we have people watching, because you don't want to come down here that something happened and the boxes got destroyed, because that is their intent, to compromise the boxes, because they were caught in their act of rigging using the statements of poll and the spreadsheet. They were caught in the act. So they were forging through with this coup d'etat. They were forging through with this illegality in the face of condemnation from around the world. Do you know the best that they could have gotten was ACDA to start saying that the international community got special interests and they are our past colonializers and they should keep out of our business. What a shameful, I should say, shameless position, not shameful, shameless position, because they lack shame. It was the same international community that they were running to when President Ramatar prorogued the parliament. And it was the same international community who was pronouncing and saying there will be sanctions if prorogation continues, that led to early elections in May of 2015. Now that the shoes is in the other foot, they want to chase them and insult them and use racism as a basis. But I'm very happy that the eyes of the world are on Guyana. We've had congressmen, senators, more than 80 international civil society organizations, all the major organizations around the world, United Nations, OAS, Commonwealth. Man, everybody has spoken locally. The Hindu community, the private sector, labor movement, the Muslim community, the Roman Catholic bishop. Everybody have said, fix this thing right. Let's get credible elections. And you have a few people who are prepared to hold all of us at ransom because of their lust for power. But it's time. It's time. The clock is ticking. And, you know, some people said to me today, let the sanctions kick in. But the sanctions is going to affect everybody. While it's going to be sanctions against a group of individuals, eventually it will affect everybody. And we got to understand that. Why can't we behave properly? Why can't we act justly? Especially when the APNU AFC campaign big banners, honest leadership, decent leadership. Mr. Granger, even if you got problems with adding, call one of your grandchildren. Let them put on all the numbers in a calculator in front of you that you got, and let them put on all the numbers that the PPPC got, and you will see there's a difference of more than 15,000 votes in favor of the PPPC. And in case you have problems with understanding English, call another one of your grandchildren and says, if I got so much and another person got 15,000 votes more than me, who is the winner? Your grandchildren will tell you. And then you could come to the nation and says, I understand I've lost the election and I couldn't see. If you don't understand it as the way it is, because it looks like you got lawyers, you got economists, you got politicians, you got accountants, all who want to benefit from your being made president on a false declaration. So they're telling you things. Trust your grandchildren with a calculator, and they will tell you what to do.
So at this point where the attempts to rig the elections are now out there, it's out in the worldwide, all the international community, every country is seeing this, and our country is being put to shame. The Guyanese people, this is being done to the detriment of Guyanese people, including their supporters, some of whom want to defend this type of thing, not understanding what sanctions mean for our country and for our people. But we're not going to encourage this. We're going to continue to fight, and electoral fraud will not have a place in Guyana. Our democracy we will continue to stand up for and fight for. And it's about time to wrap up the program. So, Bishop, do you have any final maybe words of encouragement for all the Guyanese persons across our country who are frustrated by this entire thing? I mean, it's been now over 2 weeks, and we're still waiting for the true results to come out. Bishop?
Well, there are a couple of things. Number one, the first attempt with the false declaration a couple of days after elections, I think that would have been March 5th or something like that. It did not succeed and why did not succeed. It was made in such a manner, and then even the official document bore a signature of the chairperson of the PNC. Up until now, no explanation can say why that document had two signatures. That was challenged in court, that declaration did not comply with Section 84 of the Representation of the People's Act. The Chief Justice used her constitutional office in a very effective and efficient manner, and I need to say timely manner as well, heard those matters. And of course, the whole country laughed at the arguments. One is that she didn't have jurisdiction. The judge ruled, I have jurisdiction. Then, when she got into the matter, the other argument is that Mr. Mingo had substantially complied. He didn't have to do everything in the law. He substantially complied. That was thrown out. And she gave orders. They went back and they were flouting her orders. Contempt of court proceedings were filed. We ended up back in court. During those hearings, an offer from the Chief Justice to allow the parties to talk to see if you could get a settlement. They went to mediation or ad hoc mediation or talks, whatever you might want to call it. It did not succeed, but the Chief Justice did not give up. Right there in the court, through her questioning, she was able to clarify wherever was the confusion to ensure that the process goes on because the clock was ticking. The lawyers for Mr. Mingo and Lowenfield and the GECOM said they will comply. They went, they moved everything from Ashman to GECOM. They went and put up their bed sheet and their cardboard under the shed, and they did their mischief, and they made a declaration. While that was going on, the world continued to speak. CARICOM got an agreement that says, all right, the declaration is made. The man who declared the results twice, those fake, false declarations twice, denied all of the parties who applied for a recount. Could you imagine? So then you know he's the fly in the ointment. Because a recount will expose that his declaration was wrong. So you can't rely on the man who gave you fake, false, padded, rigged results to agree for a recount, because that recount will expose his wickedness. So he refused all of the parties that they can't get a recount. The intervention of CARICOM saw an agreement for a recount. The people for the recount are here since Saturday night. This is Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night. Not one vote has been counted. The delay, the stretch out, the technicalities, the maneuverings of the Myers and the Mingos and the 3 PNC nominated commissioners at GECOM to avoid the gold standard, which is the box. Maybe the people of Guyana need to speak. Maybe the people of Guyana need to speak in a manner that is clear. They want their votes counted. And it is for the people of Guyana to decide the form, fashion, and place which they will speak to ensure that Mr. Granger and his cabal understand that their votes must be counted. And this theft of democracy must not be allowed to continue. So the celebration of 15 minutes, Granger going to swear in soon, that bubble is burst because the frying pin bore the bubble. It burst, it disappeared. people are going to wake up to realize it ain't done, it ain't over. You've had 2 attempts. The third attempt was to compromise the ballot boxes so that the recount would not be able to reflect the true will of the people. The diligence, the vigilance, the tenacity, the commitment of the supporters and the activists of the PPPC and the other parties who contested this election is highly commendable, and they will remain like that. So let's see how we can use the legal mechanisms to prevent it. But there's a tangled web they are weaving, because they're putting the chairman, a retired judge, to be in contempt of court because of an undertaking that she made to the Chief Justice and to all the people of Guyana. So it's not over. Game is not over. And the person who could assist the Chief Justice in all of this is Mr. Keith Lowenfield, by taking out all of those original statements of poll that he received from all the presiding officers from every polling station across the country. And from those originals that he received, not relying on what he got from the ROs, give the chairman of GECOM a true reflection so that when the tabulation from the 10 ROs come before her, she'll be able to compare and says, this is not what these originals are reflecting. We have to resolve this problem. And the way you resolve this problem, recount. A recount is provided for in the law. So I don't understand how this injunction of preventing a recount could hold up at the time of a hearing when a recount and a final count and a count after that count. The law provides for several counts. We've only had one count. The law, Section 84, provides for several counts, and we've only had one count. So I don't understand how an injunction restraining GECOM from doing a recount, or maybe we have to study that injunction more. Maybe it's the CARICOM high-level mission. They don't want to count the votes. They would like Mr. Mingo and Roxanne Myers, again, to count a third time so you could have another third declaration. But the whole world is saying we don't have confidence in that count. We don't have confidence in that machinery. We don't have a confidence in that approach because of what we have seen. Let an independent, non-partisan body supervise the recount. And that is what they're running from. That is why they want to chase away the observers. That's why they want to abuse the observers. That's why they get an actor to go against the observers. That is why they're trying to apply pressure to people. And in all of this, the only beneficiary is Granger and the Acton AFC with a false declaration. And the only redress they want the PPP to have is action after a swearing in of the president. So they want to steal the election, and then you fight it after. It will not happen. Guyanese must not allow it to happen. And I hope that we're all sufficiently educated. I hope we're all sufficiently aware. And don't let them say this thing going on for too long, let me get it over with. No, this is too important. This is too important for them to wear you out because of some maneuverings in the court and some skullduggery. Hold strong. And that's why I want to say to all Guyanese, hold strong. Speak in a manner that is clear. Speak in places where it matters, and speak to those that ought to hear so that eventually we could have a resolution to this matter and that is credible election results. And I repeat, credible elections results. We're not going to have no president that will be accepted by anybody in this country or anybody around the world who will assume office with fake and false declarations facilitated by a rigging crew who is determined to keep Granger and the APNU AFC into power. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And all those who stand to be beneficiaries, I want to let you know that that benefit will be for a small time, because the world will not tolerate this nonsense. They have already spoken. Ghana will be isolated. The sanctions will come against the individuals. You will feel the squeeze in ways that you could not even imagine. We have to get this resolved now. It's not too late. The count was supposed to start based upon today's agreement at GECOM at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is shortly, if it's not 5 as yet. Let us see what will happen. To all the praying people of Guyana, keep the faith. Continue to exercise calm and patience. And don't allow this wrong, this diabolical plot, this conspiracy to go ahead. We must take a stand. Guyana must rise, and Guyana must not allow this lawlessness and this evil to stand. Those are my words for all my brothers and sisters of Guyana.
Bishop, thank you for coming on the program. And viewers, as Bishop said, keep the faith and democracy will prevail. Thank you for watching. I'm Vanelda Harris. Goodbye.
That was a paid program, and the views and opinions expressed were those of the host and other speakers and do not reflect the views and opinions of TVG Channel 28.